Welcome to Mystic Realms Recap. Links are in the description below. Please show some love of the author and me. On to the show.
You hid deeply, Einar said to the half-elf, whom he had asked to meet in private. I didn't think that Pazuzu had become that strong. As soon as his companions finished receiving their treatment in the Academy's infirmary, the barbarian prince had come to look for Lux. Einar had seen Lux's named creatures before, and among them, Pazuzu didn't stand out as a fighter. Although his comrades didn't use their trump cards because they were forbidden to use them, he believed that the fortress defender hadn't shown his own trump cards either. Truth be told, Einar was very surprised when he realized how much Lux had changed since the last time they met each other. The half-elf was radiating an aura of confidence like a veteran fighter who had fought countless battlefields. Well, he has faced many strong foes as of late, Lux replied. So, tell me, what did you want to talk about in private? Einar looked at the academy from the balcony of Iris' personal residence. This was the most protected place in the academy, so it was guaranteed that whatever comes out of their mouth wouldn't be heard by anyone. Since we have fought many battles together, and I recognize you as my temporary leader in the sacred dungeon, I'll be honest with you, Einar stated. This time around, the representatives of the Vahan Empire might be a cut above us. I only heard this news from my father before I came here, and I believe that you will be told by your father as well before we leave for the sacred dungeon. However, I strongly advise you to be more low-key this time. It is possible that the guest of the Vahan Empire will forcefully take over the leadership of the operation by killing you once we enter the sacred dungeon. Lux arched an eyebrow after hearing Einar's words. He knew how proud the barbarian was, and it would be very difficult to make Einar submit to others. For the barbarian prince to tell him something like this meant that the guest coming from the Vahan Empire was truly a big shot. A big shot that mustn't be offended at all costs. But Lux only laughed internally. If a mere initiate dared to try killing him inside the sacred dungeon, they would definitely find themselves at death's door. However, curiosity won him over, so he decided to ask Einar who that guest was. Who is it? Lux asked. What faction do they belong to? I don't know who it is because my old man is tight-lipped, Einar replied. But for him to warn me that I shouldn't offend the guest from the Vahan Kingdom means only one thing. We are talking about someone that is coming from a powerful organization. At the very least, the information I receive states that 2 saints are acting as that person's bodyguards. Lux's face immediately became grim after hearing Einar's explanation. If that guest was being guarded by 2 saints, it certainly meant that they weren't simple people. Saints weren't cabbages and, at most, a kingdom would only have 1. Empires might have 2, or even 3 of them at once. However, these powerhouses didn't have that much free time to act as bodyguards for a person. Even Emperor Andreas only had a high ranker by his side. The saint of his country would move only when their national interest was in danger. As long as it didn't come to that point, they would not actively participate in any large-scale wars, even if Emperor Andreas were to order them. Do you know what kingdom or empire they belong to? Lux asked. Einar shook his head. All I know is that they come from a faraway place, farther than the neighboring kingdoms and empires of the Skystead Alliance. Lux quieted down for a bit before nodding his head in understanding. Thank you for telling me this, Lux stated. I'll also ask my father for information about these guests from the Vahan Empire. Einar nodded. Even though my father told me to avoid offending this guest, that won't stop me from teaming up with you on this expedition. The barbarian prince then gave Lux a devilish smile, which greatly enhanced his sharp features. If they want to form a team on their own, they're free to do so, Einar said. I'll stick to the winning team, so I'm going with you. Lux smirked and raised his closed fist. Visit N0VL/BIN for the best novel reading experience. Einar did the same, and the two shared a fist bump as comrades who had fought side by side throughout the previous expeditions inside the sacred dungeon. I'm sure that Val feels the same, so you don't have to worry about us. Einar crossed his arms over his chest. Even if the 6 kingdoms and the Zinner War Pact align themselves with that guest, we will still go with you. I'm sure that Henrietta and her guild members will do the same. But know this. If you and that person come to blows, I will just watch from the side. My old man doesn't want to have any conflicts with that organization, so I'll apologize in advance for not being there if ever your ass gets handed to you." Lux chuckled after hearing Einar's statement. Everyone thought of him as a troublemaker because of the conflicts he had with the Skystead Alliance, Zinner War Pact, and even the Six Kingdoms. However, as long as they were inside the sacred dungeon, where saints are barred from entry, he was sure that he would be able to deal with anyone of the same rank as him without much trouble. The two then chatted about a few more things before parting ways on good terms. Life is never easy, Lux thought. When one problem is solved, another one takes its place. I'd better find Father and ask him for all the information he has about this mysterious organization. My guild is still not strong enough to fight against saints. The half-elf sighed as he made his way toward the headmaster's office, where his father, Alexander, was also waiting for his arrival. Lux stayed inside the headmaster's office for nearly an hour before returning to Iris' residence to digest everything that he had learned from his father. Einar told him that the Vahan Empire's guest was being guarded by 2 saints, but according to Alexander, there were not just 2, but 4 saints. This was a very alarming number, which proved that they were not dealing with an ordinary kingdom or empire, but an SS or even an SSS-ranked kingdom or empire. Lux knew that the highest rank a kingdom or empire could have without a saint was B rank. If a kingdom or an empire had a saint, it would immediately reach the A rank status. From that point onwards, the more rankers, high rankers, and saints a kingdom or empire had, the higher their rank would be. Right now, Lux had access to 3 SSS-ranked kingdoms. The Kingdom of Agartha near the core of Elysium. The Kingdom of the Dragon Race, Karshvar Draconis, which was located high above the clouds floating near the center of Elysium. The Kingdom of Aspoir Frieden, the home of the High Elves, where the oldest race in existence lived. These 3 kingdoms boasted an army that was capable of conquering the Skystead Alliance, Zinner War Pact, and 6 kingdoms without too much effort. Why? Because SSS-ranked kingdoms and empires all had one thing in common. They had a supreme-ranked being. Supreme was the strongest rank among mortals. The rank equivalent to this among the monsters was called demigod. Supremes and demigods were the strongest beings in existence, and no one would dare to offend the factions they belonged to. For saints, so it's at least an S-ranked kingdom or empire, Lux thought. The barbarian king was right when he asked Einar to not antagonize these people. When Lux asked his father, Alexander, what stance he should take in the upcoming dungeon exploration, the saint of the Barbados Academy told him that he was free to do whatever he wished. "We Kaisers are not afraid of conflicts," Alexander stated. "However, we should never start one. If we are provoked, then we will fight back. But if you ever plan to do something, wait until you are inside the domain of the fallen. These people are from Elysium, so they can't touch us here in Solais. Besides, you have a way to travel to different places, so you won't have to worry about being alienated anywhere in the territories of the Zinner War Pact." Although Lux had plenty of ways to dodge the hunt of 4 saints in Elysium, he was more worried about Henrietta and Iris' guild, Serenity. Their main guild headquarters was located within the territories of the Zinner War Pact, and if their allies decided to root them out, there was nothing that they could do about it. Alexander's answer to this was quite simple. If Serenity gets dissolved, you will have to take responsibility and invite its core members to your guild, Alexander replied. Problem solved. Lux never expected that his father would be very resolute in his decision, allowing him to breathe a little easier. In the beginning, he was willing to suffer a bit to ensure that Iris and Henrietta's guild would remain untouched by the politics between the Skystead Alliance and the Zinner War Pact. Now that Alexander had given his permission to dissolve the guild anytime and allow its core members to join Heaven's Gate, Lux no longer had to worry about offending some people if they touched his bottom line. After making peace with his future plans, Lux went to find Iris so they could spend some quality time together. A few days passed, and the representatives of the 6 kingdoms had all arrived in Barbados Academy in order to take part in Lux's birthday celebration. The turnout was better than expected, and among the sea of unfamiliar people, there were familiar faces. Gerald, Natasha, Rainer, Val, and Xander were among them. There were also other people that Lux was meeting for the first time, and most of them were the high-ranking nobles and diplomats that belonged to the Six Kingdoms. Tomorrow is your big day. Are you nervous, Lux? Iris asked while washing her fiancé's hair inside the bathroom. A bit, Lux replied. I'm not good with big celebrations. Well, you better get used to it. I'm sure that things like this will be happening more often in the future. I guess you're right. Kai, who was washing Lux's back with her hands, simply listened to the discussion without saying a word. Under Iris' teaching, the priestess of the Rowan tribe was training to touch Lux's body little by little, starting from his back. Although her washing technique was a bit clumsy, she was making great progress in overcoming her embarrassment about being around Lux while naked. The half-elf had already seen her naked body twice, and even then, he didn't demand anything from her, nor did he take advantage of the fact that she had agreed to become his fiancé. Lux was fine in taking things slow with Kai. He wanted to properly embrace her as his lover and fiancé when both of them were ready in heart and body. After the two ladies washed Lux's every nook and cranny, all three of them entered the hot spring together. Iris sat on Lux's right, while Kai sat on his left. With a beauty on each side, the half-elf would certainly be the envy of everyone if they were to see him at that moment. Under the water, Lux was holding Kai's hand. As part of her training, read latest OVLS at envy/e/l/by.com. Iris, on the other hand, wrapped her arms around Lux's waist, resting her head on his shoulder. Lux, look forward to my and Kai's gift tomorrow, Iris said mischievously. I'm sure that it will be the best birthday gift ever. I like the sound of that, Lux replied before kissing Iris' forehead. Will you give it to me at the party or in private? Iris giggled before nodding her head. In private. What we are going to give you is for your eyes only. Isn't that right, Kai? Why yes, Kai stuttered. It's a surprise after all. The beautiful priestess face became beet red as she remembered Iris' proposal for Lux's birthday gift. She never thought that the blue-haired beauty was that bold, but since they were doing it together, she felt that she would be able to overcome her embarrassment. Even though she still wasn't ready to give Lux her chastity, she was fine with giving him the next best thing, which would be her gift to the half-elf on his 17th birthday that would be celebrated with great fanfare. Seeing her reaction, Lux had a vague idea about what the two were planning. However, as a man, he was looking forward to what the two ladies were planning to give him. Finally, the big day arrived. I hope I don't have to do this every year, Lux said as adjusted his clothes in front of the mirror. I feel like an animal in the zoo, being stared at by tourists. Puh. Eiko, who was perched on top of Lux's head, tilted her head in confusion. A zoo is a place where exotic animals are kept in cages, Eiko. Okay. The baby slime nodded her head even though she didn't completely understand what her papa was talking about. Lux had just finished styling his hair and repeatedly told her not to ruin it for the entire duration of the festivities. Eiko agreed and decided to behave, simply sitting on top of Lux's head like she always did. After making sure that he looked presentable, the half-elf left his room and headed to the main event hall. Iris was still being assisted by Kai in her private residence, so she asked Lux to go ahead first. It was an unspoken rule that girls took longer to dress up than men, so the half-elf heeded her words and went to the event hall to talk to his acquaintances. As he walked through the hallways, he noticed how busy the staff of the academy was, and he felt sorry because they had to work so hard in order to keep the event going smoothly. The moment he entered the main hall, almost everyone's heads turned in his direction. Lux wasn't fazed by their stares and simply walked at a confident and steady pace, heading towards Gerhardt and Keen. The two were wearing formal clothes, which made some of the ladies glance in their direction from time to time due to how dashing they were. Keen, in particular, stood out the most because he had grown quite exceptional under the care of Rose, who made sure that he ate 3 times a day and got enough sleep. The once skinny swordsman was still as quiet as ever and would only give curt responses when Gerhardt spoke to him. But the way he carried himself made him look so mysterious in the eyes of others, making them want to know him better. "So, how does it feel to be a year older?" Gerhardt asked in a teasing tone. "It feels good," Lux replied as he picked up a glass of fruit juice from the tray of one of the servers that walked past him. "I look forward to another year of working with you guys in Elysium." Heen and Gerhardt also raised their own glasses and clinked them with Lux's because both of them felt the same. "To our growth and future success in Elysium. Cheers." The three drank from their glasses and started to make some small talk about random things. But that didn't last for long because Alicia came looking for Lux and dragged him away to meet the dignitaries from the Six Kingdoms. The half-elf didn't resist, knowing that this was politics, and he also wanted to know how the other kingdoms viewed him. "I saw the sparring match the other day, and I have to say that the information we have on you is very wrong," the high ranker of the barbarian kingdom, Kaven, said with a smile. "Please, take good care of Prince Einar inside the domain of the fallen. The barbarian king and I have high hopes for future collaborations between you and His Highness. I would also like to take this opportunity to formally give you an invitation, on behalf of His Majesty, to visit the Jijin Kingdom anytime. We will do our best to show you how we barbarians treat our friends, so we hope you can take some time off of your busy schedule to visit us." Lux nodded. "Einar and I are good friends, so I'll be happy to visit the Jijin Kingdom when I'm done tying up some loose ends on my part. I consider the barbarians as my and my father's steadfast allies, so a future collaboration between us is something I look forward to as well. New chapters will be fully updated at novl/bin.com." Alicia, who was standing beside the red-headed teenager, nodded her head as if to confirm that the headmaster's and Lux's statements were one and the same. Kaven was highly satisfied with Lux's reply and Alicia's reaction because it meant that the saint also considered them as allies. Because of this, he became warmer as he continued to chat with the half-elf as if they were old friends who hadn't seen each other for a very long time. Eagles Nova 1. A few minutes later, Alicia escorted Lux to meet with Zarazel, who was the Elven King's brother, as well as a permanent member of the Elven High Council. "I believe your father has already briefed you about the guest from the Vahan Empire, correct?" Zarazel asked. "Yes," Lux replied. "I want to know the elves' stand in regard to this matter." The corner of Zarazel's lips rose slightly as he eyed the half-elf, who everyone deemed to be the key to conquering the Gate of Famine. "To answer your question, the Elven Kingdom decided to choose you as the temporary leader that will lead Prince Enlil and his protectors to clear the Gate of Famine. Although the origin of the Vahan Empire's guest is unknown, we Soleans are not fazed by their background. They might be strong in Elysium, but they can't touch us here. However, that doesn't mean that we need to antagonize them. As the leader chosen by the Six Kingdoms to lead the younger generation, make sure to show some restraint. Even if you are provoked, as long as they are not threatening your life or anyone around you, make sure to endure a bit and learn to suffer a little. Politics is like that. For everyone to get along, compromises must be made. Do you understand?" "It is as you say, Your Excellency." Lux nodded. "As long as they don't touch my bottom line, I will be willing to endure some of their provocations." "Good. You have the makings of a good statesman. This is an attitude that is befitting of a guild master. By the way, what's the name of your guild?" "Ars Goetia." Zarazel pondered for a bit as he tried to decipher what the name meant. However, even with his knowledge, he was unable to determine what Lux's guild symbolized. "What language is Ars Goetia?" Zarazel asked. "Is it just words you made up, or does it have a deeper meaning?" Lux had already prepared the answer for this question ever since he chose to use the name Ars Goetia as the pseudonym for his guild. "It means Parade of 100 Demons," Lux replied. "I intend to create a guild that will make everyone fear its name." "Parade of 100 Demons? This is indeed a domineering name." Zarazel smirked. "I'll keep my eyes and ears open for any accomplishments that your guild will make. If there is an opportunity, you should collaborate with Prince Enlil's guild, Noblesse, when dealing with world bosses or high-ranking dungeons." Collaboration between allied guilds was a very common thing. The Storm Dragons Guild, which belonged to Wildguard's stronghold, often teamed up with the members of Henrietta's and Iris Guild, Serenity, every time there were important missions. This allowed both guilds to send their elite members, allowing them to have a higher chance of clearing a dungeon or defeating strong monsters without suffering too many casualties. "I'll seriously consider this," Lux replied. "However, does noblesse help with large-scale wars? When I talk about large-scale wars, I mean participating in a war where millions of soldiers fight against each other. Large-scale wars are a bit difficult." Zarazel frowned. "Elves don't breed as fast as humans, so every elven child is precious. However, as long as they are not treated as cannon fodder and there is a higher chance of survival, we will consider it." Zarazel wanted to ask where in Elysium this war would take place, but he decided to hold back his question. Although there were tensions between the Skystead Alliance and the Zinner War Pact, a war was unlikely to happen unless Emperor Andreas and the steward of the alliance were confident that they could win against their greatest rival. Lux wasn't really thinking of waging a war against anyone and was merely fishing for information about how far the elves were willing to side with him when *T hit the fan. Zarazel's lukewarm answer was enough for Lux to know that he couldn't count on the elves when it came to high-risk missions. After talking to the elven representatives, Alicia escorted Lux to the other diplomats of the Six Kingdoms. This experience allowed Lux to gain a better understanding of which kingdoms were willing to truly ally themselves with him and Barbados Academy. Aside from the Barbarian Kingdom, the Azov Kingdom, where Val came from, was very eager to have a formal alliance with Barbados Academy. For Lux, this was a normal outcome because Val could be considered the strongest member of the young generation in the Azov Kingdom. This meant that the royal family paid close attention to his opinions, which ultimately led them to actively pursue an alliance with Barbados Academy. A few minutes after Lux and Alicia finished making their rounds, Alexander appeared at the top of the Great Staircase, catching everyone's attention. "Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank all of you for coming to celebrate my son's birthday," Alexander said with a smile. He has now turned 17 years old. Although he can no longer be considered a boy, he is not yet an adult either. Even so, I have confidence that he will be able to do great things that even those older than him wouldn't be able to do. It was very rare for Alexander to praise Lux. Because of this, the latter felt his cheeks burning and wondered if his father had drunk a lot of alcohol because he was praising him a lot. The headmaster of the academy, who was not aware of the half-elf's thoughts, made a gesture for Lux to come up the staircase and stand by his side, which Lux obeyed with a smile. The Saint of Barbados Academy then rested his hand on Lux's shoulder before continuing his speech. "The date of the expedition for the Gate of Famine is drawing near, and I'm sure that all of you have already made ample preparation for the challenges ahead," Alexander stated. "However, know this. Those who choose to side with us will be treated as friends. Those who don't will of course be treated as strangers." The young are filled with passion and never lack the energy to do many things, going beyond their limits. For us adults, we know that there are boundaries that we should pay attention to in order to ensure that everyone gets along to maintain the status quo. But remember this. We Kaisers are an unruly lot. If even one of us is hurt, all of us will fight back. Alexander gave a smile that wasn't a smile, which made the high rankers of the different kingdoms shudder subconsciously. Aside from Lux, Iris, and Vera, Alexander had no more family members in the world. If one of them were to suffer any grievances, he would definitely make his anger known to the world. After making sure that everyone understood the message he wanted to pass along, he raised his hand and made a gesture. "As you may already know, my daughter, Iris, is Lux's fiancée," Alexander stated. "The two of them will get married in 2 years, so I hope that everyone will bless their union." As if waiting for that cue, a beautiful, blue-haired young lady wearing a white dress started to descend from one of the upper staircases. Everyone in the hall, especially the teenage boys, couldn't help but gaze at Iris with infatuated looks. Check new chapters at novelbin.com. Even Lux, who had already made love with his fiancée many times in the past, couldn't stop his heart from skipping a bit due to how beautiful she was right now. Her hair was styled like that of a princess, and the silver tiara on her head made her look like the real deal. The blue-haired beauty's graceful movements carried an air of confidence that seemed to be engraved in her very bones. Although everyone already knew that she was Lux's fiancé, that didn't stop them from envying the half-elf, who managed to win the heart of a saint's daughter. They were aware that, although they were step-siblings, they weren't truly blood-related, so there was no problem with their union. In everyone's eyes, they were like a match made in heaven, and the moment the two of them stood side by side, holding each other's hands, this image only became more profound. Kai, who entered the event hall in her boar form, wasn't noticed by anyone, not even by Xander, who was one of her protectors. She had helped Iris fix her hair and clothes and followed behind her using the secret pathways of the academy in order to arrive at the main hall undetected. They look good together, right, Fei? Wei. Kai smiled as she looked at the two people that she would share the rest of her life with in the future. Despite knowing that the path that she was going to take was filled with thorns, she had already made her decision to take that step and was doing her best to get closer to the half-elf, who was also doing his best to make her feel that she was an important person in his life. Originally, Alexander was supposed to announce her engagement with Lux as well, but due to her delicate circumstances, they decided to keep it a secret for now. Are you sure about this, Kai? Out of nowhere, Maximilian appeared beside his granddaughter, which almost made Kai shout out in fright. Fortunately, she didn't do that, or it would have ruined the current mood inside the venue. Yes, Grandpa, Kai replied after regaining her composure. I don't want to expose myself to others right now. Maximilian sighed in his heart, but he also understood that this was for the best. He was just a little sad that his beautiful granddaughter wasn't up there on the staircase beside Lux and Iris. He wanted Kai to live a normal and peaceful life, but her body physique would cause wars to break out if people became aware of it. As if sensing his presence and gaze, Lux glanced in the direction of the saint of the Rowan tribe and held his gaze. The two stared at each other for nearly half a minute. No words were said between them, and yet, both men understood each other. The red-headed teenager nodded his head as if to assure the saint that he understood what the former wanted from him. Maximilian nodded back because Lux's gesture decreased the worries inside his heart. Although they had already talked about it in great detail back in the Rowan tribe, the saint was still feeling a little anxious because of the vision that his granddaughter, Rose, saw a week ago. His only hope was that Lux, who was also there at the scene, would ensure Kai's safety and prevent her from falling into the hands of the beings that wished to use her for their own selfish desires. You've gotten better at dancing, Iris commented as she danced with her fiancé in the center of the ballroom. I practiced a bit, Lux replied. Under everyone's eyes, the two shared the first dance together. Back then, it was Iris guiding Lux to dance, but now, the half-elf was able to dance alongside her and match her movements. The two of them dance well together, Maximilian stated. I can't help but compare him to that sickly boy Vera brought to my tribe several years ago. Back then, he looked as fragile as a dry twig, but now, he is hailed as the strongest member of the young generation. Speaking of which, I haven't seen Vera as of late. How is she? Alexander emptied his wine cup first before placing it on top of the table. Mother's life is no longer in danger, Alexander answered. However, she's still recovering. As to when she'll return, only time can tell. I see. Maximilian sighed. Well, it's good to know that she's no longer in danger. It's just weird to not see her here, especially since it's her grandson's birthday. The saint of the Rowan tribe then moved closer and said something in a very low tone that only Alexander could hear. I've found an ancient record belonging to one of the tribes near the location of the domain of the fallen, Maximilian stated. I don't know how accurate these records are, but it seems that the domain was created to lock up an abyssal duke from the void who once attempted to conquer Elysium. The gates are actually the seals that bound him in place. Duke ranked abyssal? Alexander narrowed his eyes. Then, is it a saint? Yes, but if the records are accurate, then his rank should have degenerated over the hundreds of years that he has been sealed. Maybe he's just a pseudo-saint or a high ranker at the moment, but he is a threat nevertheless. If that's the case, then that explains why no rankers are allowed to enter the domain of the fallen, Alexander commented. Whoever locked that Duke inside probably thought that there was no way for initiates to survive the Deimos and Argonaut-ranked monsters inside the domain of the fallen, as well as conquer the 4 gates of the apocalypse. A wry smile appeared on Maximilian's face as he thought about the 3 out of 4 gates that had been unlocked. If the final gate of famine was conquered as well, then the last gate where the Duke was sealed would also open. I think it's a little too late to stop this now, Maximilian commented. Even if we warn the others, they will just think that we're getting in their way from getting resources inside the domain of the fallen. Alexander nodded. Is there anything else that you haven't told me? Yes, Maximilian replied. Although this is not confirmed, the record said that once the 4 gates have been opened, low rankers will be able to enter the domain of the fallen as well. Alexander looked calm on the surface, but this information that Maximilian shared with him would definitely break the delicate balance that had been maintained since the domain of the fallen had been discovered. He and Maximilian were saints, and both of them had rankers belonging to their factions. However, the number of these rankers wouldn't surpass the number of fingers on their hands. EAD new chapters on no/v/e/l.com. Although the 6 kingdoms didn't have saints, they had plenty of rankers, which would allow them to send more people to the domain of the fallen once the restrictions had been lifted. Are you thinking what I'm thinking? Alexander asked as he looked at the saint of the Rowan tribe, who was looking back at him with a devilish smile on his face. Yes, Maximilian replied. I guess it's better to tell Lux to start farming all the resources available in the domain of the fallen before others get them. I've heard from Kai that your son's guild has this special ability that allows him to summon his guild members in his current location. How about it? Do you feel like taking a stroll together with me inside the domain of the fallen? We'll split everything 40/40/20. Both of us get 40% and your son gets 20%. Do we have a deal? This time, the corner of Alexander's lips rose up as he held Maximilian's gaze. Sounds fun, Alexander commented. Count me in. Maximilian grinned as he picked up his wine cup and toasted with the headmaster of the Barbados Academy. Since the domain of the fallen was bound to be looted by the Skystud Alliance, Zinner War Pact, and 6 kingdoms once the Gate of the Famine had been conquered, it wouldn't be a bad idea to take everything before the others got a chance. Since they had the ability to do it, why not do it? Kai was now Lux's fiancée, making her part of Alexander's family. Since they were already joined at the hips, the headmaster of Barbados Academy didn't mind sharing the spoils with his future in-law. The representatives of the 6 kingdoms, who were paying close attention to the 2 saints, didn't have any idea about what the 2 of them were talking about. If only they knew that the 2 shameless powerhouses were planning to loot everything inside the domain of the fallen, to the point that not even scraps were left behind, they would definitely latch onto them like leeches and beg them to take them with them. Right beside the saint's table, Kai, who was busy feeding Eiko and Fei some pork chops, noticed the smiles on Alexander's and Maximilian's faces. Gramps and Iris's father look like bandits right now, Kai thought as she fed Fei some pork chops. Are they perhaps talking about the plan I proposed to Gramps? The boar had heard her grandpa mention in passing back in the Rowan tribe that if he could just enter the domain of the fallen, he would definitely take all the treasures inside and not leave anything behind. Since Kai was in her boar form, her "I love treasure" mentality suddenly gave her a brilliant idea. She then talked to her grandpa about Lux's ability to summon his guild members anywhere, like what he did in the Hakka dynasty when the red-headed teenager was rescuing Great General Garrett's family. Kai thought that if it was possible for Lux to summon her grandpa inside the domain of the fallen, then all the treasures inside it would belong to them without fail. It would belong to her. Deimos-ranked monsters? Argonaut-ranked monsters? In front of a saint, all of them were just like little bugs that could be crushed under her grandpa's foot. Lux also needed some high-ranked beast cores, as well as monster corpses and monster parts, for the upgrade of his undead army, so killing those strong monsters, which they avoided every time they entered the domain of the fallen, was also a good thing. Eagles Nova 1. Oh, when Maximilian had finished listening to his granddaughter's story, a plan immediately came to his mind. He knew that if he asked Lux's father, Alexander, to come with him to take a stroll inside the domain of the fallen, the headmaster of Barbados Academy would definitely say yes. Because of this, he waited until Lux's birthday ceremony in order to share this news with Alexander, making the latter agree without a second thought. Both saints were laughing internally because they now had a way to one-up the Six Kingdoms, Zinner War Pact, and Skystead Alliance, who were greedily eyeing the resources of the domain of the fallen. The two saints had long wanted to make these three factions suffer, and what better opportunity was there than taking everything they coveted, right out from under their noses. The party would last until past midnight, but Lux and Iris retired right before the clock was about to hit 12. Check out LTSDVL on NOVL/bind, CM. The blue-haired beauty was a bit tipsy because she had drunk quite a bit of wine, forcing Lux to carry her back to her room in a princess carry. Kai followed behind the two, with Eiko and Fei Fei perched on top of her head. Both slimes were already sleeping because they had also drunk some wine out of curiosity. Since both of them were still babies and had very low tolerance for alcohol, one glass was all it took to make them tipsy. The moment the door of Iris' room closed, Kai transformed into her human form and carried the two baby slimes to the basket where they slept. She then moved the two baskets to the other bedroom, allowing Eiko and Fei Fei to sleep in peace. Lux gently laid Iris on the bed and looked at his fiancée, whose cheeks were tinged with a scarlet hue, making her look exceptionally delicate. I want to eat her up so badly, Lux thought as he looked at the defenseless beauty on the white sheets. But I'll let it slide for now. She looks so tired. Kai, who had just finished tucking the kids in the other room, walked up to the bed and lightly caressed the side of Iris' face. She's down for the count, Kai said. Help me remove her dress. I'm sure that it's very uncomfortable to sleep in. Lux nodded, and with Kai's help, they managed to strip the clothes off Iris' body, bearing her naked beauty in front of them. Kai then unceremoniously covered her best friend's body with a blanket before helping Lux take off his own clothes. After sleeping and bathing together multiple times, the priestess of the Rowan tribe's shyness towards her fiancé had decreased significantly. Lux was also very gentle and respectful to Kai, making the latter feel safe around him. The half-elf never did anything that would make his second fiancé feel uncomfortable, and because of this, Kai's resistance to his touch also decreased. The two had already kissed on the lips a few times and cuddled together on the bed. However, they never went past that and focused on getting comfortable with each other. After all of his clothes were removed, with the exception of his underwear, the half-elf proceeded to help Kai take off her dress as well. Although Kai went to the party in her boar form, Iris insisted that she wear a dress when going to the party. The priestess agreed and wore the ceremonial clothes of the Rowan tribe, which were worn during special occasions. One by one, the priestess' clothes fell on the carpeted floor beside her feet. Lux had never mentioned this to her before, but Kai gave off a fragrance that fanned the desire in his chest when she was in her human form. He assumed that this was one of the side effects of Kai's unique physique, enticing the opposite gender to approach her. Lux had also drunk a few glasses of wine, but he wasn't that tipsy. Even so, he was intoxicated with Kai's irresistible scent, making him subconsciously kiss the nape of her neck, causing the priestess' body to stiffen in surprise. When the half-elf came to his senses, the deed was already done, so he immediately apologized to Kai for doing something uncalled for. However, to his surprise, Kai only shook her head and cupped his face. I am your fiancé, Kai said. What you did is within your rights as my fiancé. Also, I didn't dislike your gesture of love towards me. This is more like lust instead of love, Lux replied with an apologetic face. Your scent is more intoxicating than the fine wine I drank earlier. Kai blushed, but Lux's straightforwardness made her innocent heart flutter. Actually, Iris and I are supposed to give you a gift tonight, but she's already down for the count, Kai said as she looked at the sleeping beauty on the bed with a helpless smile. But since I'm still sober, I'll give you your gift on her behalf. Kai then held Lux's hand and gave it a light squeeze. "You're going to accept it, right?" "Yes," Lux replied in a hoarse tone and allowed himself to be led to the bed by Kai. The priestess then took out a long red cloth from her storage ring and blindfolded the half-elf before making him lie down on the bed. "Don't move, okay?" Kai whispered in Lux's ears. "I'm still not used to this, but I'll do my best." A few seconds later, Lux felt Kai's soft lips press over his own. The priestess was only a beginner when it came to kissing and was still not comfortable with using her tongue. Because of this, she could only do quick kisses, but it was enough to make the heat rise to the half-elf's chest. Kai then stopped kissing his lips and moved to kiss his neck, collarbone, and slowly made her way downwards. When the kisses reached his abs, he felt two delicate hands move to take off his underwear. Eagles Nova 1. Lux never thought that the priestess would do something so bold, but he still raised his hips to allow her to take them off smoothly. Just as Kai had successfully taken off Lux's underwear, the blue-haired beauty who was sleeping earlier opened her eyes by a fraction to see what her best friend was doing. Iris regained her consciousness when she felt that she was being undressed. But after sensing that the ones removing her clothes were Lux and Kai, she pretended that she was still asleep and waited to see what would happen afterwards. Iris wanted the two important people in her life to take that next step in their relationship, so she didn't get in the way when Kai decided to take the initiative in order to give Lux their birthday present. She watched as the priestess of the Rowan tribe stared intently at Lux's little brother, who was standing tall and proud, as if challenging Kai to fight him for 10 rounds. Of course, Kai had no intention of going all the way with Lux for now because her heart and mind weren't ready yet. Even so, she lowered her soft and delicate lips and kissed Lux's member. After kissing it for a minute, Kai felt that she had reached her limit and was about to call it off when Iris slowly propped herself up and kissed the priestess' cheek. "Sorry for making you wait," Iris said softly. "Let's do it together." Iris knew that Kai was still holding back, so she decided to lend her hand and lips to ensure that their birthday gift to Lux would make the half-elf happy. The red-headed teenager, who was blindfolded, suddenly felt two soft lips kiss and lick his, making his heart shudder. Since he couldn't see anything, his sense of hearing and touch was enhanced, making him more sensitive. A moment later, he felt someone sit on top of him and slid his, inside her body. Naturally, Lux knew that the one who did this was Iris, because Kai was still not ready to do such a thing. Just as he was enjoying his fiancée's loving gesture, he felt a hand slide under his head and raised it up. The half-elf then felt his lips brush against something soft and fragrant. Then, he felt something firm enter his mouth, making him swallow his saliva subconsciously. It didn't take long for Lux to realize what his lips were touching, which surprised him greatly. "Don't suck them too hard, okay?" Kai's voice that held a tinge of shyness reached his ears. "Be gentle with me." Lux obeyed his second fiancée's words and sucked on her soft right breast, which was slightly bigger than Iris. The half-elf used everything he knew about making a lady feel good and, before long, Kai's muffled sighs reached his ears, making him feel happy in his heart. This is the best gift ever, Lux thought as he enjoyed the present that was offered to him by his two fiancés, who were doing their best to make him feel good, allowing him to reach a peak of pleasure that he had never felt before. 2 hours later, Lux laid on the bed with Iris and Kai hugging him from his left and right sides, making him feel blessed to have them as his fiancés. He knew that the priestess of the Rowan tribe had tried her best in her own way, making Lux feel smitten with her. However, he knew that this time that they had together would only last for a few more days before they had to go back to Elysium to challenge the Gate of Famine. In regards to the Gate of Famine, Lux was confident that he would be able to clear it. However, he admitted that the presence of the silver-haired devil who had once tried to kill Kai was giving him cause for worry. Although he could summon strong warriors to help him in battle, his instincts were telling him that the abyssal noble wasn't someone so simple. "I just hope that I don't see him again," Lux thought before slowly closing his eyes to sleep. "I just want to get this over with so I can visit Colette and the others." The half-elf had so many things to do, but he couldn't do it all at the same time. After the Gate of Famine was conquered and he finished meeting up with his dwarven friends, he planned to take a look at one of the SSS-ranked kingdoms, whose keys were in his possession. Karshvar Draconis had given him a pleasant surprise, so he was wondering if he would find an even bigger surprise once he went to the Kingdom of Agartha, a legendary kingdom that only a few privileged people could ever dream of visiting. Be careful, Iris said before kissing Lux's lips. Prioritize your safety above all else. I will, Lux replied and gave his fiancée a firm hug. Take care while I am away. Egglesnall, be safe. Echo. Iris kissed the baby slime perched on top of Lux's head, and the latter kissed her back with a smile. After a minute, Iris reluctantly took a step back, glanced at her best friend, and gave Kai a hug. Be safe, Kai. Iris hugged her best friend tightly. Make sure that Lux doesn't cheat on us, okay? Thank you. Kai hugged Iris back and kissed her cheeks. Don't worry. If he ever did that, I'll beat him up. Isn't that right, Fei? Wei. Today was the day that they would go back to Elysium and travel to the location of the Domain of the Fallen. The representatives of the Six Kingdoms had left a few hours ago, leaving only Lux and his entourage inside Barbados Academy. Everyone was making last-minute preparations while waiting for the half-elf to take the lead on their journey to their destination. Time to go, Lux softly said as he hugged Iris and Kai at the same time. Although Kai had already been Lux's fiancé for quite some time now, only a handful of people knew about it. They agreed to not tell anyone for the time being, keeping the betrothal a secret for as long as possible. After their group hug, Kai transformed into her boar form, trailing after Lux as they exited Iris' room. The blue-haired beauty didn't walk them out since she had already said her goodbyes. Partings were always hard for her, so she deemed it best that she not see Lux and Kai leave this time around. When the half-elf and the boar arrived at the teleportation gate of Barbados Academy, Keen, Gerhardt, Xander, and Einar, with his barbarian entourage, were already there, waiting for them. Aside from them, Henrietta and the 4 other representatives of her guild, Serenity, were present as well because they decided to go together with Lux. Is everyone here? Lux asked. Everyone around the teleportation gate nodded their heads. The Zinner War Pact, Skystead Alliance, and the Six Kingdoms had all built a one-way teleportation gate that would allow everyone who had the qualifications to enter the Domain of the Fallen to teleport a kilometer away from it. Before we go, I would like to tell everyone something, Lux stated. I'm sure all of you are aware of the mysterious group that will be coming to the Domain of the Fallen alongside the Skystead Alliance. If they provoke you in any way, make sure to ignore them. We will move separately from them once we enter the sacred dungeon. Once again, everyone nodded their heads to acknowledge Lux's words. They all recognized him as the temporary leader of their group, so everyone listened to his orders. After saying what needed to be said, Lux took the initiative to enter the teleportation gate first, while the others followed behind him. Between the borders of the Zinner War Pact and the Skystead Alliance. So you guys are finally here, Xander's father, Hector, greeted them. Took you long enough. Lux smiled as he returned the high ranker's greeting. Sir Hector, are you here to escort us to the meeting place? Lux asked. Yes. I can't possibly leave you kids to fend for yourselves, can I? Hector crossed his arms over his chest. So, are all of you ready to conquer the Gate of Famine? Of course, Kai answered. Conquering the Gate of Famine is like a walk in the park. We've already got this one in the bag. While everyone had their attention on Kai, a person wearing black robes suddenly materialized beside Lux. Hector, who thought that the black-robed individual was someone that had evil intentions, immediately moved to knock them unconscious, but Lux stepped up and blocked the high ranker's path. Sir Hector, it's fine, Lux said. This is a friend of mine that I invited to come with us to the Domain of the Fallen. A friend? Hector frowned. As a high ranker, he made sure that he was always paying close attention to his surroundings. The black-robed person suddenly appeared out of nowhere, catching him by surprise, so he thought that he was dealing with another high ranker who specialized in assassinations. Yes, he is a friend I met in Elysium. Don't worry. He is pretty harmless, Lux replied. Go on, Introduce yourself to them. I'm not interested in introducing myself to lowlanders, the black-robed figure said. It is beneath my dignity to do that. Lux had the strong urge to slap the arrogant dragonborn, but he decided to give him face and simply smiled apologetically at Hector, whose frown had grown deeper. Would it kill if you act like a proper person and show humility? Gerhardt asked the black-robed figure in irritation. Shut up, the black-robed person replied. Let's just go to that sacred dungeon and get this over with. Einar, Xander, and Henrietta looked at the black-robed figure and wondered if he was one of Lux's summons. It wasn't the first time seeing the half-elf summon his subordinates out of thin air, so they were already used to seeing some new faces every now and then. Shall we go then? Hector asked. Since the black-robed figure wasn't an enemy, then there was no need to apprehend him. Everyone summoned their mounts and began the short journey toward the cliff that would lead them down to the Gate of the Fallen, F0 Low New Hapters at nov/el/bin/.com. As soon as they arrived, all the eyes of the people inside the cavern looked at their location. Hector took the lead, and Lux followed behind him. The half-elf glanced at the people inside the cavern and noticed that there were more rankers present compared to last time. He also noticed several people wearing black robes like Cephas, who was keen on hiding his true identity until the last minute. As the half-elf glanced at the guests from the Vahan Empire, he noticed 4 people with exceptionally strong auras guarding a person at the center. Just like the report that Father received, Lux thought. They really do have 4 saints. The half-elf then shifted his attention to the person standing among these 4 strong individuals and couldn't help but feel something vaguely familiar about him. What he didn't know was that the person being guarded by the 4 saints was feeling the same way, making him pay close attention to the red-headed teenager who was infamous among the Skystead Alliance, Zinner War Pact, and the 6 Kingdoms. Is that him? Prince Cyrus asked Malcolm, who was standing on his right side. Yes, Your Highness, Malcolm replied. That is Lux von Kaiser. The second prince of the Vahan Empire eyed Lux from head to foot as if gauging how strong he was. He doesn't look that strong, Prince Cyrus commented. Are you sure that he is the reason why the 3 gates have been conquered? Yes, Your Highness. I see. Aside from Prince Cyrus, all the teenagers who would be participating in the dungeon expedition locked their eyes on the half-elf. Is that him, Jasper? One of the representatives of the Zinner War Pact asked their temporary leader. He's the one that beat you? I can't remember, Jasper replied. All I know is that I tried to backstab him in the past, but I couldn't recall what happened after that. You can't remember? He might have knocked you unconscious before you could even deliver the killing blow. Maybe you're right. Jasper, who had been mercilessly gangbanged by the skeleton gangbangers, had his memory erased in order to prevent him from developing trauma due to the horrifying experience that he had been through. As one of the top prodigies from the Zinner War Pact, they couldn't allow his future to be destroyed just because of the one mistake that he had unknowingly committed. Even so, Jasper's sixth sense was telling him that no matter what happened, Lux was someone that he shouldn't try to cross again no matter what. Aside from Jasper, someone else was also paying close attention to the red-headed teenager. Nero, who had fought Lux in the past, narrowed his eyes when he vaguely sensed that the half-elf had grown a lot stronger since the last time they met. This could easily be seen in the way Lux walked, which carried an air of confidence that could only be obtained after surviving many hard battles. Now that all the representatives from the different factions had gathered inside the tavern, it was time to delegate the leaders of the expedition. Prince Cyrus, Jasper, Lux, and the black-robed figure guarded by the 4 saints had all gathered in front of the Gate of the Fallen to discuss who would be leading the expedition. I've heard many things about you, Lux von Kaiser, Prince Cyrus said with a fearless smile on his face. But I don't know if those stories are true or not. Looking at you today, I can say with certainty that those rumors were greatly exaggerated. Lux ignored Prince Cyrus' taunts and decided to speak what was on his mind. I have my own way of doing things, so I'll only take my people with me, Lux stated. Of course, if any of you want to join my team, you are welcome to do so. But you must follow my orders without fail. Look at you talking like a big shot, Prince Cyrus snorted. Are you sure you don't want to join our team instead? No. Your loss. Jasper, who had been listening for a while, lightly cleared his throat and voiced out his thoughts. The representatives of the Zinner War Pact will accompany Lux von Kaiser in this expedition, Jasper stated before raising his hand for a handshake. This is the decree given to us by our kings, so that is what we will do. I look forward to working with you, Lux. I look forward to working with you as well, Lux replied before shaking Jasper's hand. Truth be told, he was slightly feeling guilty about what happened to Jasper in the past. Although they were enemies, getting gangbanged by his skeleton gangbangers wasn't the best thing a young man in his early 20s should experience. Fortunately, we're on the same side now, Lux thought. He will not have to suffer from PTSD again. Suddenly, and without any warning, Prince Cyrus moved and tried to grab the baby slime that was perched on top of Lux's head. He had heard that the half-elf cared deeply for the baby blue slime, so he wanted to see how the latter would react if he took Eiko as hostage. Suddenly, a loud rumbling sound echoed in the surroundings as the second prince of the Vahan Empire spat a mouthful of blood after his body crashed towards the walls of the cavern. Aaron, who was Emperor Andreas' right-hand man, immediately went to check how serious Prince Cyrus' injuries were. He had known long before that Prince Cyrus had been wanting to test Lux to see how strong he really was ever since he had heard his name. The Prince of the Vahan Empire was an arrogant and violent person. He had developed a very big ego because he always got away with anything he did due to his family's background. He believed that he was practically untouchable until the delegation of the black-robed individuals arrived in their capital city. Even if their empire was strong, they only had one saint to look after their kingdom's interests. Their visitors, on the other hand, had 4 saints who served as bodyguards to the black-robed person that Emperor Andreas recognized as their faction's leader. Because of this, Prince Cyrus didn't dare to act arrogant in front of them. Since then, he had been waiting for a long time to vent his frustrations on the red-headed Necromancer, whom he heard many things about. So, that's your true color, Prince Cyrus said as he wiped the blood that flowed from the corner of his lips. I guess there is some truth to the rumors after all. The Prince of the Vahan Empire looked at the 5-meter-tall corpse god that enclosed the half-elf in a protective stance. The unholy apparition had 8 arms, and 7 of those arms were holding a weapon. The last arm held a shield, which it had used to bash Prince Cyrus' body and sent him flying toward the wall of the cavern. Overall, the corpse god was quite a sight, making one of the saints wearing a black robe mutter the words "Memento Mori" the moment he saw it. Of course, no one was paying attention to the saint because they were all busy looking at the half-elf, who had dealt first blood to the second prince of the Vahan Empire. The next time you try to hurt those who are important to me, I will kill you, Lux said with a hint of killing intent. Kill me? Prince Cyrus laughed as he propped himself up from the ground. You sure are cocky. Is it because your father is a saint that you can spout such nonsense? The rankers of the Vahan Empire all moved in unison and stood in front of their prince, waiting for his order to teach the half-elf a lesson. However, before Prince Cyrus could even give an order, an arrogant and contemptuous tone reached everyone's ears. Stand down, lowlanders. Cephas took a step forward and threw away the black robe that was covering his body, revealing his battle regalia, which was the trademark of the royal guards of the Dragon Kingdom, Karshvar Draconis. I am Cephas, one of the royal guards of the Dragon King, Cephas declared in a tone filled with arrogance. Lux von Kaiser is under my supervision. Anyone who dares to harm him will have to go through me first. The Dragonborn, who didn't want to reveal his identity at the beginning, stood between Lux and Prince Cyrus with his arms crossed over his chest with his draconic wings spread wide. If you don't want your entire empire to be wiped off from the face of the world, kneel and apologize like the maggot you are, Cephas stated. A lowlander scum like you isn't even qualified to lick my feet. Lux and Gerhardt, who had beaten the crap out of Cephas in the past, couldn't help but give the arrogant Dragonborn a thumbs up in their hearts. Although they had beaten Cephas black and blue in the past, The shameless dragonborn was still as domineering as ever, making them wonder where his confidence was coming from. The sourk of this content N/O/V/L by N. However, since they were all on the same side, they kept silent and simply watched Cephas stare down on the rankers of the Vahan Empire as if they were mere bugs that he could trample under his feet. While Cephas was staring down the rankers and high rankers of the Vahan Empire, the guild chat of Heaven's Gate had turned very lively. Kai, go Cephas. Damn, I never thought you had it in you. The readers and I had almost given up on you, but you're making us so proud of you right now. Mad respect, bro, mad respect. For someone who was dropped when he was still an egg, you are seriously bringing out the big guns and taking one for the team. Is this what they call character development? Get the L test VLS at O/V/E/L/by co. Gerhardt, this idiot is done for. Lux, maybe you should hire the Gameshin Impact Merchant Guild to make a marble coffin for this fool. Heen, Rose taught me a lot about flowers. I can probably pick some good ones to put in his grave. Lux, sounds like a great idea. I'll also pick some flowers in the outer reaches. What quote do you think is good enough to put on his tombstone? The corner of the Dragonborn's lips twitched as he read the chat logs in the guild chat. Unable to take their bullcrap any longer, he retaliated and sent his thoughts, making everyone know how displeased he was. Cephas, you ungrateful bastards. Who do you think I'm doing this for? Instead of supporting me, you're even bad-mouthing me? You damn F***curs. Kai, why should I support you? Those are rankers and high rankers. I only bully the weak and fear the strong. I don't want to die, you know? Gerhardt, stepping into the argument of others, who do you think you are? Do you seriously think you're a big shot or some kind of hero? You're just a Cephas. You should know your place. Keen, a wise man once said, never interrupt your enemy when he is making a mistake. Please, do carry on. Lux, Cephas, if you have any treasures hidden somewhere, now is the time to reveal their location. It is best to share your blessings with others. Cephas, you damnable curs. While the guild chat of Heaven's Gate had turned into a cursing war, Aaron, who had deemed that Prince Cyrus' condition wasn't serious, looked at the imposing dragonborn in front of them. A single glance was enough to tell him that the dragonborn was only of an initiate rank. Had this been an ordinary situation, he would have ordered his men to capture Cephas and Lux so that he could punish them for attacking their prince. However, he couldn't put out such orders because of Cephas' race. Even Prince Cyrus, who was known to be a very arrogant and aggressive individual, held back as he glanced at the black-robed men that were observing everything from the side. Cephas, who had reached the limit of his anger because of his guildmate's *T, glared at the rankers and roared. Didn't I tell you maggots to kneel and apologize to me? Cephas roared in anger. Do all of you really court death? Do you really wish to face the might of the Dragon Kingdom's army? Do you dare? Shut up, weakling, a deer ranker from the Vahan Empire shouted back. You are the one who should know your place. Without another word, the ranker charged at Cephas with his blade poised to strike. However, the next moment, the ranker found himself hitting the ground face first as one of the black-robed men stepped on his head. You're as arrogant and obnoxious as the last time I saw you, Cephas, the black-robed person said. One day, that stupid mouth of yours will cause your death. Cephas looked at his own clawed hand and rubbed it over his plated armor before blowing on them as if he had everything under his control. And you are? Cephas asked in an arrogant tone. Your voice sounds familiar. However, do you know that it is impolite to not show your face in front of a royal guard of the Dragon Kingdom? Cheeky brat, you don't really know how to spell the word death, do you? The black-robed person replied before taking off the hood that covered his face. You're the only one who has the guts to talk like this in front of me. After removing the hood that covered his face, the expression on Cephas' face changed to that of surprise because he never expected to see a familiar face so far from their kingdom's zone of influence. Uncle Picaro? Cephas blinked in confusion. What are you doing here? The black-scaled dragonborn snorted before kicking the deer ranker toward the other rankers that belonged to the Vahan Empire. Aaron and Prince Cyrus had been wanting to ask the saint why he attacked their man when they were all supposed to be on the same side. However, after hearing the younger black-scaled dragonborn call the powerful saint Uncle, they all decided to keep their mouths shut and think of a way to salvage the situation. "Now you call me uncle, you brat?" Pecora walked forward and smacked Seth's head, making the latter cry out in pain. "I should be the one asking you questions. What are you doing here?" I already said this earlier, Uncle," Sethis replied with a face filled with injustice. "I'm here to supervise the half-elf. This is an order from the Dragon King himself." "Oh, him." Pecora glanced in the half-elf's direction before narrowing his eyes. If it had been any other dragonborn, I would have already smashed their head into a pulp. "You're lucky your two grandmas love you very much." Sethis smirked at his uncle before shifting his gaze to the person that was still being protected by the three other saints. "Does the Crystal Palace have business with the domain of the fallen?" Sethis asked his uncle, who was still eyeing Lux with an appraising gaze. "That's none of your business, you brat," Pecora replied. "Have you forgotten that Karshvar Draconis and the Crystal Palace don't see eye to eye? You should just go back to your floating city and stay out of trouble." Sethis firmly shook his head and once again crossed his arms over his chest. "No can do, Uncle," Sethis stated. "I already mentioned it earlier. I'm here to supervise Lux. As for why the Crystal Palace is here, I am willing to keep this a secret from the Dragon King for Grandma's sake. Although he doesn't look like it, he still honors the oath he gave hundreds of years ago." "An oath of convenience," Pecora scoffed. "We don't recognize him as the true and rightful king of the dragon throne. He's just an usurper." Sethis sighed before shaking his head. This issue had long started even before he was born, so he had no intention to make a big deal of it. Karshvar Draconis and the Crystal Palace were like oil and water. Once the dragons and dragonborns from both sides meet somewhere in Elysium, there was a high chance that it would immediately escalate into a fight. Pecora wasn't lying when he said that if the Dragonborn wasn't Sethis, he would have already killed him to ensure that their secret wouldn't reach the ears of the Dragon King. "Uncle, I'll just say this," Sethis said with a solemn face. "Lux and his comrades are my guild members. I would appreciate it if you don't do anything to harm them." Pecora didn't reply right away. Truth be told, their goal was to take something that belonged to the dragon race from within the domain of the fallen. It was a treasure that had been given to a saint of the human race by the former Dragon King, which the latter used to fight against the Duke from the Abyss, sealing the devil inside the domain of the fallen. If not for the fact that the artifact they used to find the domain's location had just been fixed recently, they would have long conquered the four gates of the apocalypse and retrieved the demigod-ranked artifact that had been sealed inside it. Now that the location had been discovered by humans and quotas used to enter it were limited, they had no choice but to use the humans as cannon fodder in order to get what they wanted. The Crystal Palace had a pseudo-demigod artifact that would allow them to enter the domain of the fallen, so they didn't need to forcefully take the quotas of the teenagers who managed to conquer it in the past. However, at most, they could only bring 30 people inside, and all of them had to be initiate and below. They had brought enough loyal dragonborns from the Crystal Palace who were still of the initiate rank in order to assist their leader to conquer it without fail. Part of their plan was to coerce Lux, as well as everyone who belonged to his team, to work for them, just like they did with the Vahan Empire. However, Sethis' existence was a variable in their plan that they had to carefully consider. "Who are the people that belong to that half-elves group?" Pecora asked. Immediately, Jasper and the members of the Zinner War Pact moved to stand beside the half-elf. Val, Enlil, Einar, and Henrietta also moved toward the half-elf, bringing their subordinates with them. Sethis gave these people a sidelong glance before shifting his gaze back to his uncle. "Uncle Pecora, although Lux is the only one that I am supervising, I consider the rest of these lowlanders my servants," Sethis stated. "Rest assured, I will not interfere with your plan to clear the Gate of Famine. However, I will also lead these people to clear it as well. May the best team win." Pecora laughed after hearing Sethis' words that were filled with determination. "Fine," Pecora replied. "Since they're your servants, we will not take the initiative to attack them. However, if they get in our way, we will not hold back. Do I make myself clear? Sure, Cetus answered coolly. I've always wanted to see how strong the younger generation of the Crystal Palace is. I hope I won't be too disappointed. The 30 black-robed individuals that belonged to the Crystal Palace all glared at the arrogant dragonborn. However, since they were all wearing hoods, their expressions couldn't be seen so easily. Cetus then glanced in the direction of the rankers of the Vahan Empire and clicked his tongue. What are all of you doing staring at me like idiots? Cetus asked. Didn't I tell all of you to kneel and apologize? Dumb humans, do you still not know your place? Picoro crossed his arms over his chest and glanced in the direction of the Vahan Empire. His gaze was telling Aaron and Prince Cyrus to just do it already so that they could already go inside the domain of the Fallen and start the expedition. Left with no other choice, Aaron, Prince Cyrus, and all the rankers of the Vahan Empire knelt and apologized, making the corner of Cetus' lips curl up into a smile. After this incident, everyone belonging to the Skystead Alliance, Zinner War Pact, and Six Kingdoms drastically changed their impression of the half-elf, who had a very strong backer supporting him. What they didn't know was that the arrogant dragonborn, who had made the proud prince and rankers of the Vahan Empire kneel, was gloating in the Heaven's Gate guild chat, making all of his guild mates want to spit on his face so badly. After the Vahan Empire's apology, the candidates all lined up at the gate of the domain. Cetus had his arms crossed over his chest as he stood at the very front, with Lux behind him. Right beside Cetus were the black-robed members of the Crystal Palace, led by the one that was being protected earlier by the Four Saints. Although Lux had tried to ask Cetus several times about who the leader of the Crystal Palace was, the Dragonborn was tight-lipped and simply said that this was a matter between the dragon race. Most up-to-date NVELs are published on N0 Velge N.co/m. Seeing that Cetus didn't want to disclose anything, Lux no longer pried and just focused his attention on the expedition. Please be careful inside, Picoro said to the black-robed individual leading the members of the Crystal Palace. If things get out of hand, evacuate right away. The one leading the members of the Crystal Palace nodded. All of you, make sure to protect him at all costs, Picoro stated. Lay down your lives if you have to. Yes, sir. Cetus sighed as he looked at the Gate of the Fallen. Although he had ties with the Crystal Palace, he just couldn't agree to their methods when it came to getting what they wanted. Let's get this over with, Cetus said before pressing his palm on the gate in front of him. A second later, the gate slightly opened and Cetus, along with the others who had the right to enter the domain of the Fallen, all turned into particles of light. These lights then flew towards the opened gate where the sacred dungeon was waiting for them. Domain of the Fallen. So, this is the domain of the Fallen. Cetus frowned. I can sense danger everywhere. The Dragonborn was about to take a step forward, but Lux's hand rested on his shoulder, preventing him from taking another step. Don't leave the safe zone, Lux stated. I can sense an Argonaut-ranked monster hiding in front of us. All of the teenagers who had decided to follow Lux stopped in their tracks. Just like Cetus, they were about to move away from the safe zone, but when they heard Lux's words, all of them immediately felt their blood turn cold. They had followed the half-elf in the previous expeditions and knew that his words were something that should be taken seriously. Bunch of nonsense, Prince Cyrus snorted. I don't see anything. The second prince of the Vahan Empire ignored Lux's words and was about to leave the safety zone when he heard an authoritative voice, filled with power, stopping him in his tracks. Don't move. The leader of the Crystal Palace didn't even bother to give Prince Cyrus a sidelong glance as he ordered him to stand down. Now I know why you were able to clear the 3 gates despite being a lowlander. The leader of the Crystal Palace took off the hood covering his head and glanced in the direction of the half-elf. Your ability is the real deal. An angelic-looking young man with blue hair and blue eyes looked at the half-elf with a faint smile. On his head, 2 crystal dragon horns glittered faintly in the sunlight. It was truly an exceptional face, free from imperfections. Even Lux, who was confident in his looks, had to agree that the person in front of him was way more handsome than he was. My name is Or said. Lux replied. Or gave Lux a curt nod before shifting his gaze to the path in front of him. Although the surroundings looked perfectly normal from a distance, those with heightened senses would feel that there was something lurking somewhere, which the eyes couldn't see. Originally, just like Prince Cyrus, Or wanted to see just how strong Lux was. However, the moment he laid his eyes on the red-headed teenager, he sensed some kind of familiarity in him that prevented him from doing anything rash. What he didn't know was that the feeling that he, the Saints, as well as the Dragonborns felt was Lux's passive skill, Dragon Conqueror's Majesty EX. This skill raised Lux's charisma, preventing the dragons and the Dragonborns from immediately becoming hostile to him unless Lux attacked or provoked them first. For a few minutes, everyone stayed where they were and simply tried their best to look for the Argonaut-ranked monster that the red-headed teenager had warned them about. The entrance of the Gate of the Fallen had a protective barrier that prevented monsters from attacking those who had just entered the domain. As long as they didn't leave its protective perimeter, no monsters would be able to attack them. Unlike the others, Lux could pinpoint the location of their enemy and was even able to identify what kind of monster it was. Because of this, he knew that anyone who left the safe zone would immediately be killed due to how proficient their invisible enemy was. Hey, do you have anything on you that can seriously injure an Argonaut-ranked monster? Lux asked. Don't casually talk to our leader, half-elf, one of the Dragonborns that escorted or inside the domain stated. You don't have the qualifications to even speak his name in a casual manner. Shut up, Cephas snapped at the Dragonborn who suddenly interjected in the conversation. Lux was talking to Or. Are you Or? Since when did your parents give you the name Or? Can you please not interfere in a discussion where you weren't called for? It makes you look like an attention whore. Why you? The Dragonborn was about to hurl insults at Cephas when Or raised his hand, making the Dragonborn hold back what he was about to say. It's fine, Or replied. It will be difficult to communicate in this dungeon if names aren't used. Also, to answer your question, I indeed have an artifact that would allow me to seriously injure an Argonaut-ranked monster. Have you found it? Lux nodded. I can bring it out from its hiding place, but luring it out is useless. We need to seriously injure it, so it will leave us alone. Very well. As long as I can see it, I will be able to deal with it. Good. Make your preparations now. Or summoned a crystal scepter and held it firmly in his hands. What he was holding was a pseudo-demigod artifact that was given to him to ensure his safety inside the domain of the Fallen. Lux then summoned Pazuzu and ordered his fortress defender to step outside of the safe zone. Pazuzu then raised his shield and took a defensive stance and waited for Lux's order. Are you ready? Lux asked Or. Yes, Or. Ready when you are. Lux nodded then, on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. The fortress defender then activated his skill duel, EX, and aimed it in front of him. At first, nothing seemed to change. But after a few seconds, the scenery in front of them suddenly shook before suddenly becoming distorted. A moment later, a 7-meter-long, green-skinned chameleon appeared in front of them, shocking almost everyone into taking a step back. With an annoyed screech, the chameleon extended its tongue and used it as a whip to lash at the fortress defender, who had already braced himself for the imminent impact. However, when the tongue was only dozens of meters away from Pazuzu, Or placed his crystal scepter in front of his lips and blew on it. Crystal Dragon's Breath. A misty dragon's breath filled with crystal shards flew toward the Argonaut-ranked chameleon, turning its tongue into crystal. As if sensing that it would die if it didn't do anything, the green chameleon decisively used its razor-sharp claws to cut its own tongue before jumping out of the path of the dragon's breath. Or's attack continued for hundreds of meters, turning everything it hit into crystals, including the ground, rocks, and trees. The green chameleon glared hatefully in Or's direction as blood dripped from its lips like a faucet. Its reptilian eyes locked onto the crystal dragon's body as if trying to memorize the face of the person that it would seek vengeance on at a later time. This glare lasted for a full minute before the green chameleon left the scene, melding with its surroundings. After the Argonaut-ranked monster disappeared, everyone was finally able to breathe a sigh of relief and look at the crystallized scenery in front of them. You can take that tongue as a souvenir, or said to Lux, who was busy tracking the Argonaut-ranked monster with his soul book. I have no need for it. Lux wanted to say that he had no need for it either, but suddenly remembered that the crystallized tongue might be a good ingredient for his skeleton maker skill. Thank you, Lux replied. The monster has left and is no longer a threat to us. We can continue on our journey. Good, or commented. I've heard that you can guide us along a safer path with the least amount of danger. You can take the lead until we reach the entrance of the sacred dungeon. You want me to lead everyone until we reach the sacred dungeon? Yes. Although I am not afraid of Argonaut-ranked monsters, it is best to avoid conflicts as much as possible. Or didn't mention that the crystal scepter in his hands could only be used 5 times a day, which is why he didn't want to use it unless absolutely necessary. The most it could do was deal with Argonaut-ranked monsters up to the Alpha rank. Field and world bosses of the Argonaut-ranked would be able to break free from the crystal breath's effects after a few minutes. The green chameleon might be strong, but it was only an ordinary Argonaut-ranked beast, so the scepter was more than able to handle it without any problem. Very well, Lux replied. Follow me. The half-elf took the lead as he entered the forest where Deimos and Argonaut-ranked monsters were in abundance. Egglesnell, his father, Alexander, and Kai's grandpa, Maximilian, had a proper discussion about the strategy that they thought of once they were inside the domain of the fallen. However, for that to happen, Lux must wait for the right opportunity to summon them in a subtle way. All the representatives of the other factions, including the members of the Crystal Palace, were carrying artifacts that allowed those that were outside the Gate of the Fallen to see what was happening inside. Because of this, he couldn't summon his father and the Saint of the Rowan tribe with everyone paying close attention to him. If he did, an uproar over the looted resources within the domain of the Fallen would become a big issue if they were discovered, and this was something that they didn't want others to discover. I'll just tell them later that I need to pee, Lux thought as he continued to lead everyone along a much safer path away from monsters. They won't follow me if I give that excuse, right? Inside the 5th gate of the apocalypse, a white-haired devil opened his eyes, while the corner of his lips rose up to a sneer. You've finally returned, half-elf, the abyssal devil said hoarsely. Time for me to send you a one-way ticket to the abyss. I hope you enjoy my hospitality. The sound of hoarse laughter echoed in the surroundings of the sacred dungeon as the sealed Duke of the Abyssal race prepared his surprise for the half-elf that was slowly, but surely, headed in his direction.
Thank you for watching Mystic Realms Recap. Please like, share, and subscribe. Have a great day.